All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here. I am ready, a little bit tired, but I am here to get us going and talking about the Denver Nuggets. I did not podcast on this platform over the weekend, and I think that it's going to be interesting to see how Denver responds to what was a pretty ugly blowout, a pretty ugly loss where they were just, I think, demoralized and didn't really have any business being in that game by the end of it. So, going to be fascinated to see how they respond. Going to be fascinated to see what they take on this road trip with them. Are they going to show up and really just shine? Are they going to struggle to some top teams, some plus 500 teams? We're going to see. We're going to find out for sure. And we're going to do it together. We're going to take a look at that and be very excited about how the Nuggets are handling their business. Once again, I am your host, Ryan Blackburn. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. Really quickly, this podcast, as you know, brought to you by our good folks over at BetOnline, the number one sportsbook and your everything for sports betting. Make sure to check it out at betonline.ag. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, they are your ultimate game day companion for NBA, college basketball, NHL, and UFC props. A lot of stuff that you can make sure to check out. They've got odds, stats, and more for every single game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Once again, I am your host, Ryan Blackburn. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Dayon says, he replies, Jamal will reignite the fire when we play the Hornets or Pelicans again. Interesting. I don't know if I can, now it would be great. Now, I don't think that they play that team again. I think that they're done. But the premise is the same, of course, where Denver just doesn't have a lot of opportunities, I'm going to say, to really lock in against some of these sub 500 teams. I think 19 of their next 25 are against plus 500 teams. So if Denver's going to do it, probably going to have to do it against a pretty good team. Going to be interesting to see whether they can. I think they will, but the question is when and how soon. But real quick, we're going to go final thoughts on Nuggets Lakers. We're going to talk about the 40-20 rule today. I'm going to talk about one thing I need to see from the team for the rest of the season in the final 25 games here. And then we're going to preview this 4-game road trip, which starts tonight against the Indiana Pacers. Let's go first with Nuggets Lakers. Obviously, did a couple podcasts on a different platform. I didn't do one on this platform, just trying to recover from the All-Star break and tired now, so maybe I should have just done something yesterday and not today, if I'm being honest. But c'est la vie. We live and we learn. But I think that turnovers were definitely an issue, and the Stone Shooter says it here. Yeah, way too many turnovers. 22 in that game. And look, everybody, I think, at this point knows that Denver, they struggled with the turnover battle. They struggled with the turnover margin. The stat that I put up in the article that I did over the weekend for Mile High was that Denver's 25th this year in turnover rate forced. Of the top 10 teams in defensive rating, they all rank in the top 13 in turnover rate. And I thought that was fascinating. I thought that was, or 9 of the top 10 rank in the top 13 in turnover rate. That's what I meant. To me, that is interesting because usually you don't associate a specific other portion of the 4 factors other than forcing missed shots into being more impactful than actually turnover rate or defensive rebounding or not allowing free throws, things like that. Denver, they don't allow a bunch of free throws. So they've got one of the 4 factors down. They're a decent defensive rebounding team. Not great, but decent. And actually, honestly, they're a pretty decent EFG against team. Teams don't make a bunch of shots against them. Like, I know that sometimes it feels that way, but they're about average in that regard. Where the problem actually is the turnover battle. And Denver loses the turnover margin a lot, and they have to make it up. And on top of having to make up the 3-point disparity on both ends of the floor, they usually have to make up the turnover battle. And so when you're working at a disadvantage like that, Denver's offense is usually very good. But if you can take something very easy, like retaining the basketball, and turn it into a weakness for Denver, then you have a great opportunity to make Denver struggle. Because Denver, one of their biggest weaknesses is also transition defense. And we saw that very clearly in this last game. 39 transition, or not transition, but 39 points off of turnovers. Not as many like points in transition as you would expect. Let me see if I can pull that up from yesterday, or not yesterday, Saturday, because it didn't feel like it was a whole bunch of transition points. Oh, but it was 33 fast break points. That is a lot. That is a lot. So obviously those things go hand in hand. If you turn the ball over and you commit live ball turnovers, that's going to be an issue. So going to be fascinating to see how they handle it. Going to be fascinating to see, can they clean that up? One of the factors that people don't really want to talk about, Russell Westbrook is the 4th highest turnover rate in the NBA. And he wasn't the main culprit from this last game. Like Jokic at 6, clearly he was the biggest issue. Murray had 5. He was the second biggest issue. Russ had 4. And when he's always doing like committing 3 or 4 turnovers in 20 to 25 minutes, that is higher than I think a lot of people care to think about. He has a lot of those moments where he will make a lot of turnover-worthy plays. And especially as he tries to work himself back into things, I'm curious to see whether he can keep the turnovers down or if that's just going to be a natural byproduct of trying to get him back into stuff. Because he looked uncomfortable for a lot of the game on Saturday. Figured some things out in the second half, but the first half was like legitimately horrible. So going to be interesting to see how they handle it. Mr. Exquisite Nugget says, in a super chat, he says, how come MPJ isn't hitting shots? Wish we won. I don't know. Like, I wish I had a better answer for you than that. But like, sometimes guys don't hit shots. Sometimes guys make a whole bunch. It's like for a guy like Michael Porter, who's such a good shooter, to me, it looked like comfort level. It just looked like he wasn't comfortable out there. And a lot of the shots, and I noted this at the beginning of the LA game, oftentimes when you try to get somebody going, you try to get them an easy shot. You try to get them something that they're comfortable taking, whether it's a spot up 3, whether it's a cut to the basket, a layup, a dunk, maybe it's an open mid-range jumper. He was taking step back jumpers. He was taking like 11, 12-foot floaters. He was taking pull-up threes off of like a kind of a tough contest and not necessarily playing a very efficient game. And so he kind of looks like he's in a bit of a funk here, but the Nuggets didn't really do him any favors, and he didn't do himself any favors by getting him an easier bucket out of the gate. And then it just kind of spiraled, and I think he got in his own head a little bit. So this is me psychoanalyzing. I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you than I did, but I think he'll be fine on this road trip. He'll probably actually have a pretty good game tonight, and if he doesn't, that means he'll have a good game on when do they next play? Thursday. Like he'll play well one of these next 2 games, and then it'll probably be behind him. Like he's a very consistent player. He's going to figure it out. But turnovers is a thing. And one other thing that I wrote about today in the preview for the Indiana game, I didn't make mention of this in any other stuff because I couldn't find the time, couldn't find the actual place to bring it up. So I just wanted to drop a little tidbit. But this is a tidbit to make sure to go check out at milehighsports.com on the latest article I put up. Aaron Gordon is generally Denver's backup center, especially in the games that matter. He's the guy that they go to on a consistent basis, backup center. Hey, you need to really lock in. You need the Nuggets to play well. Aaron Gordon. And that just hasn't worked this year. It hasn't. In 140 some odd possessions, the Nuggets have a minus 14.7 net rating with Aaron Gordon at the 5. Aaron Gordon playing center. And Denver did go to that against the Lakers in the fourth quarter when Jokic exited the floor. And I don't remember what the actual score of the game was at that point. Let me just do some, reverse. Denver was down 9. They were down, looks like 96 to 87. They were down 96-87 heading into the fourth quarter. And then they tried to go Aaron Gordon at the 5. They played Jamal Murray. They played, I think, Russell Westbrook. I think Julian Strawther and Zeke Naji. And look, that's not a great lineup, but it's not that far off from what the Nuggets are going to have to do in the playoffs. Like maybe you switch Zeke Naji and Peyton Watson. Maybe you switch Russell Westbrook and Christian Brown, or Russell Westbrook and Michael Porter. But you're probably going to play your young guys. You're probably going to play Aaron and Jamal together, and you're going to try to really load up in some of those situations. But the problem is that Denver hasn't been very good when Gordon has been the backup 5. And that's like pretty universal in almost all of the lineups that they've deployed. When you actually isolate the lineups where he and Murray have played together and he's been at the backup 5, it's been even worse. He's been like minus 17. And that to me is notable. That to me is something that, like, look, it could be a small sample size, and I'd like to see them continue to go to it over the course of these next few weeks, trying to get ready for the playoffs. I want to see what it looks like. I think that Denver should try to find ways to not play him a bunch of minutes when they do this, but they should try to get him to a place where they're playing lineups that make sense, that make sense around him. Whether they can find those looks remains to be seen, and whether he's actually capable of playing the same way that he did in 2023 remains to be seen. Number that I brought up before, in the playoffs when the Nuggets went away from Jokic, they didn't go to DeAndre Jordan. They went to Aaron Gordon at the backup 5, and they had like a +4 net rating in the minutes when Jokic sat. The year later, they were like minus 11.5 in the minutes that Jokic sat, and Aaron played the vast majority of those as the backup center. They didn't really go to DeAndre Jordan. They didn't go to another center. They went to small ball. And so it was already trending down in the playoffs last year, but I think people kind of wrote that off as, hey, not necessarily a great matchup. We still believe in Aaron Gordon being that guy. Kind of trending into the regular season. The problem that we saw last year was that it was very good in the regular season, but then struggled in the playoffs, and that was an unfortunate factor. Now you're actually seeing it struggle in the regular season too. So is this just something where it's just going to keep trending down? Can the Nuggets find actual impact with those lineups? I don't know. I actually don't know about that. So the Nuggets tried to satisfy the need for a backup center at the trade deadline. They couldn't pay what was needed to be paid. Zeke Naji, nobody wanted his contract. Nobody wanted Dario Saric's contract. And then Denver didn't have any picks to actually give up in any of these deals to really sweeten the pot. But they did try. They thought about Jonas Valanciunas. They thought about Larry Nance Jr. They thought about Chris Boucher. They thought about some other guys. Are they going to be kicking themselves that they didn't make an addition there? I don't know. Like, I don't know if that's going to be the thing. Like, I would still have preferred a 3-and-D guy personally, just somebody on the wing that could mix in and then figure it out with Aaron at the 5, with DJ at the 5. But, I mean, just looking at the minutes and looking at the actual analytics behind it, there are some concerning warning signs. So we'll see what happens. Final thing before we go to break. Denver, of course, They lose their 20th game on Saturday. There are a lot of folks that were very, very pent up about the fact that it wasn't just that they lost to the Lakers. It wasn't just that they were embarrassed on national TV again. It was the fact that they lost their 20th game. And in NBA history, I believe the number is 37 of the past 41 champions have won 40 games before they've lost 20. And so you kind of work like and kind of project a little bit with that. And you say, all right, well, Denver didn't get to 40 wins before they lost 20 games. So does that eliminate them from the playoffs? Does that eliminate them from championship consideration? No. No, it's an artificial number. Numbers like that are meant to be broken, especially in these final in these last 5 years or so, where the NBA is so much more like there's so much more parity now and less concentration at the top than there ever has been. There are no super teams anymore. There are really good teams. There are teams that build themselves up and have really high peaks, but there aren't any super teams anymore, including the Lakers, despite the fact that they traded for Luka. Like the OKC Thunder do not qualify as a super team. Boston does not qualify as a super team. They're very good, like really, really good. Are they great in compare? And like, are they unbeatable? No. The question is whether Denver is going to be the team that actually stops that. And like, look, I've made my opinions clear on that. I don't think that Denver is going to win a championship this year. I think the odds of them winning are probably like 7 to 10%. And that's being generous on the top end of that. Like 10% probably seems pretty high. But it does still exist. And just because Denver lost 20 games before they won 40, that doesn't reduce the odds to zero. It doesn't. Like Denver can still do it. There's a reason why stats like that are trends and not like official things that you have to do. I've seen a lot of folks, especially teams like fans of the Boston Celtics, fans of the OKC Thunder, teams that have already made it, teams that have already done that. They are looking around, they're looking at the teams that don't get to 40 over 20, and they're like, well, can eliminate that team. Probably not. Probably not. Just got to wait and see until the playoffs. It's clear that those teams are better. Like I think that OKC, Boston, and Cleveland clearly better teams than everybody else in the NBA, including the Nuggets. So what's Denver going to do about it? Are they going to sit there and cry? Are they going to just fold up? Are they not going to perform in the playoffs because we didn't get to 40-20? No. They got to figure it out. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to chat about one thing that I still need to see that I have not seen yet from this Nuggets team. We'll be right back here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Happy Monday to everybody that's definitely just as tired as me trying to figure out how to do this thing. To my folks abroad who are already into Monday afternoon, glad you're able to get there. It's this morning was tough. I spent probably 5 hours working last night until about 2:30. So yeah, when you take the melatonin and try to get to sleep too soon and then you have to wake up, it is a tough process. That's how I know I'm getting older, man. That's a that's a pretty tough place to be. But either way, I'm excited to talk about this one thing because I think that there's an aspect of the Nuggets regular seasons that kind of get lost to history, that get lost to especially now after they've won a championship. Where do you find the passion again? Where do you find the desire? Where do you find the kind of swagger? Like the belief that you can do whatever it is that you need to do? I think it's a fair question because I remember back into 2023 where the Nuggets were in the process of proving it. And then there was a moment after, like, they kind of strung together a bunch of wins. They played pretty well against, on December 20th, 2022, they, like, without without Murray and Porter, they dominated the Grizzlies, who were the ultimate 2 seed. Christmas that year, they won against the Phoenix Suns. Played with a bunch of swagger, played with a bunch of passion, won a big game, things like that. There were a bunch of moments after that. They won against Boston. They won against Miami. They won against, let me just kind of go through the list here. They won against the Lakers several times. They've won a whole bunch in that year. And then there was a moment in like January 8th or so where Denver just started dominating. They started demolishing teams over and over again, and it didn't matter who it was. Like, it was good teams. These were very good teams that they just pantsed, just absolutely demolished. And it was that stretch of games from like early to mid-January to about late February, early March, where Denver just had, like, other than playing against, I think, Philly, and in certain aspects where they were tired or they like met a matchup that just didn't work out for them, they pretty much dominated everybody else. And maybe that's wishful thinking on my part. Maybe if I actually go back and look at some of those games, then I might think a little bit differently than how I'm thinking in my head. But I remember the moment actually against the Pacers where Denver had 3 dunks in a row. Ball Arena was rocking. The last couple of them were because of turnovers that they forced, and they got out on the fast break. And that game was without Jokic. Murray had a triple-double in that game, his only of his career. I think. Did he have a that game, the game 3 against Miami? Did he have a triple-double in that game, or was that just 30 points and 10 assists? I don't remember. But either way, like, they were dominant in those moments. And in general, the Nuggets have not been dominant this year. They have been trying to catch up. After starting slow, after playing poorly, they've been trying to rediscover, hey, can we do this? Like, what are we actually doing? Like, how did we do it when we won those games? It wasn't just Jokic dominates equals win. It was Jokic dominates, plus we had a whole bunch of contributions across the board from, like, Aaron Gordon was a near all-star. Jamal Murray came into his own. Michael Porter found his rhythm. KCP and Bruce Brown were doing their thing. There were the occasional games where Vlatko Čančar stood up. Jeff Green stood up. Bones Highland, before he got shipped to Siberia, stood up. A lot of reasons for Denver to kind of figure some stuff out. And they didn't, like, it wasn't because of that they won the championship, but it gave Nuggets fans, and it gave the Nuggets themselves, the confidence and the swagger to figure out whatever they needed to figure out. And I'm very curious to see whether they can recover that in these final 25 games. I didn't feel as much of that last year. I felt like, okay, we're better than teams like the Nuggets from their perspective, but not necessarily that they were like super confident in that all. I mean, they were confident because they had just won the championship, but a lot of that to me was just chasing what they already knew that they had done. And it was just reminding themselves, hey, we can do this. We already did it. Look, we already did it. It wasn't organic. It wasn't something that came to them naturally. They figured it out because they had done it, but it wasn't this natural thing. So, and now, like in this season, it's clearly not natural for them to do that. And says it here. Cavs play with that passion, 100%, except when they play the Celtics. And that's my biggest concern about them. Against any other team, I think the Cavs are a threat. It's like them, like the Celtics and the Thunder will be tough matchups for them. I think the Cavs dominate every single other team in the NBA, including the Nuggets. But they play with that belief. They play with that passion. They play with a group that like actually understand. They play fast. They use pace. They do what they need to do. And there are a bunch of other teams that do that as well. OKC, I think you can point to. Memphis, I think you can point to at times. They have a little bit more youthful energy than the Nuggets do. And I think that's something that's kind of underrated. Couple months ago when I said that the Nuggets were not a young team anymore, that they're not like spring chickens, they are more of a veteran team than people realize. People thought I was making excuses and thought that I was like off my rocker and that like look at how much time that those guys have left. Yeah, maybe, but there was a brief moment in time in 2023 where the Nuggets were extremely athletic and physical and strong and could handle all the problems that they've been struggling with in some of these matchups. They play with the swagger because no matter the way that the opposing team kind of attacked them, they made it happen regardless. So it's that passion, it's that fire, it is the like actual level that they know that they can get to in their heart and they're willing and able to get to it. And they have the confidence to get to it on a consistent basis. I'm curious to see if Denver can find that over the course of these final 25 games. If they just go like 14-11, win against some teams that are resting their guys, lose against the teams that are playing a full complement, that'll be pretty shaky. That to me would represent a team that's definitely going out in the first or second round. But if Denver can find that next layer, that next level, the desire to like dominate some of these games, to really lock in and like win some of these games by 20, win some of them by 30. Or like even if a team has your number initially, find a way to come back and make some big plays and just string together some stops, string together some plays and get yourself back into a game on both ends of the floor. For the Nuggets right now, it's mostly just outscoring teams. So can they find that? We'll see whether they can, but I think that is a key for these final 25. Are the Nuggets going to play with that swagger? Are they going to play with that heart? Are they going to play with that passion? It sounds kind of lame when you say it like that, but I do think that it's true. I think that they needed a wake-up call. They needed something that kind of got them to saying, hey, we're still not good enough, despite the fact that we won 9 games in a row. Like that was against the dregs of the NBA. Now let's see what you do against real competition. So we'll see if they can. All right. Final thing here. Let's preview this upcoming road trip. Denver faces Indiana tonight. Again, I did a preview of this particular game on Mile High Sports if you want to go check it out. But Denver plays on Monday. Then they have 2 days off and they play a back-to-back on Thursday and Friday. Then they rest and they play on Sunday against Boston. So Indiana, Milwaukee, Detroit, Boston. Top 6 teams across the board and teams that I think, like Boston is the only really serious contender in that group. But Indiana, Milwaukee, Detroit, they can all win a playoff series. I don't think anybody would be confused if any of those teams won a playoff series. Now, do we expect them to? Probably not. But I think it's like one of those teams is going to have to, because one of those teams is not going to face like Boston, New York, or Cleveland. And even if the team faces New York is still kind of vulnerable. So there are definitely opportunities for 2 of those teams potentially to move on. Pacers are good. They are a high effort team. They're a team that I think shows a lot of talent and depth at different spots, but they're a team that's going to attack the paint. They're going to do everything that they can to bother the Nuggets at the point of attack. Aaron Nesmith will guard Murray a whole bunch tonight, as will Andrew Nembhard. TJ McConnell's going to be annoying, but the most annoying thing for Denver is going to be having to match up with Tyrese Halliburton. Can Christian Brown match up with Halliburton in ways that he wasn't able to against Luka? I thought he was okay against Luka, but Luka didn't really feel him. There was one turnover that Christian Brown forced. It was the only turnover of the game. He's got to force some more. Like, it's not just up to him, especially when you're playing a team defense, but he's got to be more impactful individually. There are things that he can do. He's got to take some more chances. He's got to gamble at times, and he's got to believe that the Nuggets are going to rotate behind him. That was one thing that I think you noticed from LA in that game. They gambled a whole heck of a lot for steals, but there was rotations behind them. And I think they believed that they were going to have that backup. I don't think the Nuggets believe that they're going to have that backup, and I don't blame them because nobody rotates on the Nuggets. Like, they just don't. It's a whole bunch of, oh crap, that guy gambled and now there's an open shot. There's a whole bunch of that. So, look, we'll see if they can amp that up over the course of the final 25, but this will be a good one to guess it. It'd be a good one to figure it out. Indiana is 6th in points in the paint. The Nuggets are 1st. The Nuggets just had a game where they only scored 30 points in the paint. It was their fewest in the NBA this season. The number that I put together on this most recent article is that the Nuggets are 30-6 when they score 54 points or more in the paint. 30-6. In all other games, when they score 53 points or fewer, they are 7-14. That's a big difference. Denver just doesn't have the shooting to account for the fact that when their paint scoring runs out, they struggle. They can't play that way. They struggle that way. It's not in their DNA. They are going to struggle if teams dare them to shoot threes. So Denver's got to find ways to make it happen anyway. And that's on Jokic. It's on Russell Westbrook, especially. Those guys are the paint guys. Christian Brown needs to figure it out. We'll see whether he can. But that's where I'm really looking. The games after that, obviously you play Milwaukee with Giannis and Dame, although I think Dame's been injured over the course of these past couple. Let me see if I can pull up their injury report real quick. No, he's not listed on the injury report right now. They have Kyle Kuzma. They are missing Bobby Portis because of the suspension that he sustained. Not obviously pretty ugly suspension. I don't necessarily subscribe to the way that he was treated by the NBA. Not my call, obviously. But Milwaukee's going to shoot a lot of threes. They're going to space the floor around Giannis. Detroit is going to space the floor around Cade. And then Boston's going to space the floor because they want to space the floor. So Indiana is going to be the paint team. They're going to try to get into the paint. They're not going to space the floor as much, although Miles Turner will be the guy to do that. He's going to pick and pop and shoot a bunch of threes, and he'll probably hit them. How do the Nuggets handle the paint pressure against Indiana? And then how do they transition that to defending the three-point line against some of these other teams? I'm very curious to see what the defense looks like. They got to find some ways to play good defense. Whether they can limit, how many times can they limit an opposing team to under 120 points, under 115 points, under 110 points? I don't really have much faith that they can. But if they do, then that would be a sign. That would be a good sign, I think. So we will see what ultimately happens. I'm curious to see how the Nuggets handle it. But I think that's going to do it. I think that's going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, folks. Brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. As always, I think what the schedule is going to look like this week, I'll probably do 5 episodes. And you're like, wow, 5 episodes of Pickaxe and Roll. Wow, you're really working overtime, Ryan. We'll probably do one. So today, we'll do one tomorrow after the Pacers game. We will do one Thursday in preparation for the back-to-back. We'll do one Friday to break down Denver's matchup against Milwaukee. And then we'll do one Saturday to break down the game against Detroit and probably preview the Boston game. So we'll do a variety of episodes. I'll try to bring the A game for that one. Sorry if I'm tired today. Early in the week, we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen on the next one. Thank you so much, everybody. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. Really, really appreciate the love and support as always. I will talk to you guys tomorrow.